is above the throne, above the nation, above the blood and bone of every kingdom built by mortal hand. God above all things, God above this land. Before the family, before the flag, before the story and the ancient drag of loyalty and blood, He is the first. God above all things, or nothing works. I have seen the man who put his nation first, who laid his family on the altar, cursed by the idol of a flag that could not hold the weight of what a man was made to hold. I have seen the man who made his family God, who worshipped at the altar of his blood, and lost himself and lost his children in the devotion that was never meant for men pre.
But when God is first,
the order holds,
the nation finds its soul,
the family unfolds
into the purpose
it was always meant to be.
God above all things,
Then all things free. God above all things, above the throne, above the nation, above the blood and bone of every kingdom built by mortal hand. God above all things, God above this land. Before the family, before the flag, before the story and the ancient drag of loyalty and blood, He is the first. God above all things, or nothing works. He is the King beneath whose rule all kings must bow, beneath whose word the nation sings its truest song when it remembers Him who lit the torch before the world grew dim. He is the Father of the family. Before the Father He is first and free. He is the source from which all love descends.
God above all things,
On Him it all depends.
and when God is first,
The walls hold firm,
the household stands through every coming storm.
the nation walks with purpose in its chest,
God above all things,
and all things
bless.
God above all things, above the throne, above the nation, above the blood and bone of every kingdom built by mortal hand. God above all things, God above this land. Before the family, before the flag, before the story and the ancient drag of loyalty and blood, He is the first. God above all things, or nothing works. I have ordered my house guard first, and then my wife, my children, and the land. And when that order holds, the whole thing holds in place. When God is first, there is enough of grace for everything that follows, for the land, the family, the faith, the warrior's stand. It all depends upon the first stone laid.
God above all things,
For all things, you are not one among the things I love. You are the source from which all loving comes. You are not a pillar, you are the ground on which every other pillar can be found. And so so I lay my nation at your feet. My family, my home, my every beat of loyalty, I give it back to you.
God above all things,
And all things through you true. God above all things, and so I stand with you before my nation and my land, with you before my family and my home. God above all things, and I am not alone. He is the first and he will be the last. He is the anchor holding present to the past, and every good thing built upon his name. God above all things will never be the same. Ashamed, we build on him or we build on sand.
we bow to him.
Or bow to lesser hands.
God above all things,
The order holds,
God above all things.
and everything unfolds. This land was given by God, not taken by man. This ground was consecrated before the plan of any king or kingdom, any crown. This land was holy long before we found our way to it. Our ancestors who knelt upon this frozen ground and prayed and felt the presence of the ancient living God. This land was given, this is holy soil. I know the names of those who walked before, who crossed the water and the mountain and the moor, who planted faith in ground that had no church, who prayed beneath the open sky and searched for God in every river, every stone, who made this wilderness a holy home, who left the faith as deep as roots in earth and gave it to their children at their birth. And I received it as a man receives an inheritance he did not earn, but cleaves to as the truest thing that he has known. This land, this faith, this blood, this ancient home. This land was given by God, not taken by man. This ground was consecrated before the plan of any king or kingdom, any crown. This land was holy long before we found our way to it. Our ancestors who knelt upon this frozen ground and prayed and felt the presence of the ancient living God. This land was given, this is holy song. He is the God of nations and of ground, who planted peoples and who set the bound of every land, who gave each tribe its place, who holds the nations in his sovereign grace. He is not a God of churches only, He walks the fields, the mountains, and the lonely coastlines of the world. He is the God who sanctified this ground, this ancient sod. And I will not receive this land as mine, to do with as I please. It is the shrine of what my fathers gave their lives to keep, a sacred trust, a covenant to steep my children in before I lay me down. This land is God's, and I am but His crown of steward. This land was given by God, not taken by man. This ground was consecrated before the plan of any king or kingdom, any crown. This land was holy long before we found our way to it. Our ancestors who knelt upon this frozen ground and prayed and felt the presence of the ancient living God. This land was given, this is holy sod. I will defend this ground, not out of pride, but out of reverence for what lives inside the soil, the faith, the blood, the ancient prayer of every generation buried there. I will not sell what I did not earn. I will not waste what took 1,000 years to learn. This land is more than earth, it is the page on which God wrote a story, age by age. You gave this land to those who came before. You walked it with them through the cold, the moor, the frozen field, the harvest and the drought. You were the God they trusted without doubt. And now you give it to my generation, this sacred, broken, beautiful, great nation. We hold it, Lord, as those who know the cost. We hold it as a gift, not to be lost. This land was given by God, and we will keep the faith of those who prayed it in their sleep, who rose before the dawn to consecrate each field and stone and river to the great and living God who gave it and who holds it still in His great hand. As the story unfolds of every generation standing here, this land was given, this land is holy, clear. I will give this land as I received to children who will hold what I believed, and they will give it generation on. The land of God, the faith, the ancient song. One vow before the living God, two lives becoming one upon this holy sod. Not a romantic dream, but something older true, a covenant of battle, me and you. We will not fight each other, we will fight the darkness side by side through every night. Two warriors, one vow, one God, one road. Two warriors sharing one eternal load. I did come to you without my scars. I did not come without the ancient wars that made me who I am, imperfect, real. I came with everything I could not heal, and you received me, not because I'm whole, but because God had placed within your soul the grace to love a man who's still becoming, the grace to stand beside what's still coming. And this is not the love the stories tell, of perfect days and never-ending hell, of easy mornings. This is hard or true. This is the covenant of me and you before the God who holds us and who will not let us go through every dark and still and storm. He is the third chord in our vow, two warriors, one God, and this is how. Two warriors, one vow, before the living God. Two lives becoming one upon this holy sod. Not a romantic dream, but something older, true. A covenant of battle, me and you. We will not fight each other, we will fight the darkness side by side through every night. Two warriors, one vow, one God, one road. Two warriors sharing one eternal load. He designed this covenant before the fall. He saw the man alone and heard his call for a helper and a partner, someone made from the same bone of the same unbreakable grade. He brought the woman, he presented her before the man, and everything was stirred into a union deeper than the skin, a covenant that God himself was in. And this is not the world's idea of love that changes with the feeling or the shove of circumstance. This love is chosen daily, this covenant renewed, however barely, sometimes in the hard and grinding years. This vow renewed through arguments and tears is the most sacred thing that two can do. Two warriors before God, choosing you. Two warriors, one vow, before the living God. Two lives becoming one upon this holy sod. Not a romantic dream, but something older, true. A covenant of battle, me and you. We will not fight each other, we will fight the darkness side by side through every night. Two warriors, one vow, one God, one road. Two warriors sharing one eternal load. We have fought and we have come back to the vow. We have lost the way and found each other somehow. We have carried what the other could not bear. We have been the answer to each other's prayer. In the dark, when one of us could not believe, the other held the faith, would not leave. And this is what the covenant has made. Two warriors who will not be afraid. You are the third chord that will not be broken. You are the word that was already spoken over us before we said the vow. You designed this union, you knew how it would cost us, and you called us still to this holy, ancient covenant of will and love and different choice, and you between us there. Two warriors, one God, one answered prayer. Two warriors, one vow, and we have held through everything the years have ever dealt. Not because we're strong, but because He is the God who holds the vow between us free. Two warriors, one road, one God, one fight, side by side through every day and night. Two warriors, one vow renewed today. Two warriors, choosing God and staying. We are not who we were when we began, a woman and a more imperfect man. But we are His, and we are each other still. Two warriors, one vow, one God, one hill to climb. The faith that fathers leave behind is more than gold, more than any find of silver land or name upon a stone. The faith that fathers leave is never, never alone.
It walks inside the children and their children's kin. It speaks in voices 3 generations in.
The faith that fathers leave behind will stand when everything else crumbles from their hand. I watched my father kneel before the dawn, before the house was stirring, before the yawn of morning broke. He was already there, a man alone, but not alone in prayer.
I did not understand it then, as boys don't understand the weight beneath the noise of ordinary days. But now I know that what He planted there was what would grow into the man I am. The faith I hold, the prayers that keep me as the nights grow cold. I am the harvest of a father's seed. I am the answer to his daily creed.
And I will leave the same
or more behind
for those who carry something
of my mind
and blood.
And name,
I will give them what my father gave me,
faith
and God, and not
the lesser things.
Not only land and gold,
but the ancient faith,
the story to be told. The faith that fathers leave behind is more than gold, more than any find of silver land or name upon a stone. The faith that fathers leave is never, never alone.
It walks inside the children and their children's kin. It speaks in voices 3 generations in.
The faith that fathers leave behind will stand when everything else crumbles from their hand. He is the God of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, and the long unbroken track of faith through generations, family line of those who held the covenant divine.
He promised blessing down the family tree to those who walk in faithful loyalty to Him. 1,000 generations deep, He is the God of what the fathers keep.
And past the sons, who keep the ancient flame alive,
Through loss and sleep,
and waking,
through the ordinary years,
He is the God of all the family's tears.
and every child is watching,
Even when
they seem to look away
they look again,
at what the Father does in private when
He thinks no child sees.
they see, and then
They carry it
for years,
for life,
for good,
the faith the Father lived,
the way He stood.
the faith that fathers leave behind is more than gold, more than any find of silver land or name upon a stone. The faith that fathers leave is never, never alone.
It walks inside the children and their children's kin. It speaks in voices 3 generations in.
The faith that fathers leave behind will stand when everything else crumbles from their hand. Be found faithful at the end,
Not perfect but consistent to the bend
of every year,
I want my children's children
to say he held the faith.
through every winter,
He was not a perfect man,
but He was true.
He brought us every morning.
Back to you,
He knelt, He prayed,
He read the ancient word,
He left us something
priceless that He heard,
from God and gave to us,
and we will give
to every generation.
as we live.
The faith that fathers leave,
Is all we need,
the faith that fathers leave.
becomes the creed.
You are the God of every
Generation,
You hold the thread of every
family station,
in your great story.
every bloodline bent
Toward you,
is every family's.
truest meant. And so I
Take the faith I have received,
multiply it
deepen it, believed,
more fully,
so that what I leave behind
is more
not less.
than what I was assigned.
The faith that fathers leave behind,
Relive,
beyond the grave,
it is the greatest gift that any man
can give his children.
The life that showed him what the ancient is, the God of every morning,
Every night,
the God who held the line
who held the line
through every generation.
every year,
The faith that fathers leave
is always here. My Father left me faith, and I will leave
the same and more
for all who will receive
in after me.
the ancient living true.
The faith that fathers leave
Leads back to you.
Where God dwells, home remains. Through the loss, through the changes, through the pains. Where He is welcomed at the door each day, the house becomes a holy, holy place. Not by the size of stone or beam or wall, but by the one invited above all. Where God dwells, home remains through every storm. Where God dwells, home is always come home from battles worn and thin, and found the threshold and the light within that had been kept by one who prayed and waited, a home that God in faithful love created. It is not perfect, it has cracks and age. It carries every chapter, every page of arguments and laughter, grief and grace. It is the most important sacred place. The world is never built, the home where God has been invited into every floorboard, sod and wall and table and the children's prayers. A home where heaven sometimes unawares appears. And I have learned that home is not the walls, it is the presence that inhabits halls, the presence that we choose to welcome more, to crowd out with the lesser at the door. Where God dwells, home remains, through the loss, through the changes, through the pains. Where He is welcomed at the door each day, the house becomes a holy, holy place. Not by the size of stone or beam or wall, but by the one invited above all. Where God dwells, home remains through every storm. Where God dwells, home is always, always warm. He's the God who chose to dwell among the people in a tent when they were young. As a nation he did not stay far above, He pitched His tent among them, such was love. He came into a house in Bethlehem. He sat at tables ordinary, and then He made them holy simply by His seat. He is the God who makes the home complete. And I will build no wall too high for Him, no room too private, no hour too dim. I will open every door and say, Lord, this house is yours, come, come and stay. Where God dwells, home remains, through the loss, through the changes, through the pains. Where He is welcomed at the door each day, the house becomes a holy, holy place. Not by the size of stone or beam or wall, but by the one invited above all. Where God dwells, home remains through every storm. Where God dwells, home is always, always warm. Build a house where children know that God is real, not just a word, but so present that they taste Him in the bread that He is in the morning, and the bed of prayer at night, where He is named, is thanked, where His word is read, where nothing's ranked above His presence, and the children grow into the God they learned at home to know. As for me and for my house, we will serve the Lord through every day, until the last of us has crossed the final door and found the home that we were made for. And it begins here in this but very sacred every day.
Domestic space
Where God is welcomed and the home finds grace.
where God dwells, home will always, always stand. Through floods and fire, through the loss of land,
Through generations, through the changing years,
where God is welcomed,
home outlasts its fears.
not stone, not gold, not legacy.
Your name makes home eternal. Only He can claim that right.
And where He dwells,
The home is held where God dwells,
home remains.
forever spelled in mercy every morning at the door.